Hey there everybody, Brent here, and I am actually going to be doing a couple of repairs to a miniature model that I designed way back in probably 1997, I want to say. My first year over to the States, I was living in Florida, and yeah, it was Florida. It was kind of a little quiet there. So I had some free time on my hands in Florida, and I ended up by basically doing some sketches, had an idea for a design for a Star Wars based spaceship that I wanted to try to make. So I scratch built it. I unfortunately don't have many photos of the construction of that model at the time. Everything was not digital camera back in the day. It was still good old fashioned film. But the photos I did take, I actually built this underlay of a cardboard structure. I did take some of the model pieces from the model kit of the Millennium Falcon, like the gun turrets and the satellite dish, and some of the landing legs, things like this. And these pieces, unfortunately, have broken off over the years, and I'm going to do a few repairs. I did build the entire interior of the cockpit. At one time, it did light up, and you could see inside the cockpit. I'm going to try to see if I can rewire that up again to have a look and see what happens from there. Maybe I'll get lucky, maybe I won't. I don't know how frayed the wires are at this point in time. Biggest thing, of course, happens to be the amount of dust that's on this thing. So dusting it off, best way to do it is just get a little cheap chip brush and start to kind of hit it up, get rid of all the dust. So this particular model, I based it off of the Millennium Falcon, the Stocklight Freighter. I always wanted to try to make my own design. Ever since I saw the Outrider, it was one of those things that inspired me to do this model. It's amazing how much dust builds up over the years. Now, there are parts in here that I have to get back together. They're broken on the inside, and these parts are going to be a lot tougher for me to get right. So the underneath is pretty dust free, but in fact it shows off the original colors that I had a lot better in this model. I have here the wiring section where I plug in my wires that lead all the way over to the cockpit here, as well as some of the engine. I've got some broken legs in here that I do need to repair again. This guy here is bent right out of shape. I've got some that are broken off, pieces that I will need to fix up and do some repairs to. These legs actually were taken from the model kit of the Millennium Falcon. I figured may as well use what was already there. There was some great little pieces that they had built and designed. I built little door pieces, little panel doors that designed to open and close on this side here as well, and they're going to have to get glued back in. I got a couple of pieces of wire here that I need to figure out. Most of them I think come from the top. Most of this is just simple metal wire, and then I bent it with the pliers to figure out how I was going to shape it in. You can see all those along here running along the model. They're all additional pieces I added on top. Some of these other pieces of model kit are just random shapes, random pieces I saw that I liked. Here I got the little zip tie ends, for example, along the back here. They created this perfect little shape. I've got a couple of pieces missing there altogether that I'm going to have to refix and cut from scratch again and put back in and repaint. On this particular model, I ended up by building myself a Mon Calamari cruiser blaster weapon. I wanted to create some sort of organic shape in this and something that felt different from the overall model that made it read differently. And on top of it, I decided to also put the Rebel Alliance logo on the bottom because it just seemed like a cool thing to do. Let's try to start figuring out how to fix these little glue spots here. I'm trying to figure out which ones belong to what. Okay, this guy belongs over here. So I ended up by getting myself some Gorilla Glue And I'm going to do some very light attachment. This Gorilla Glue does set within a couple of minutes. You can get the other gel stuff that lasts. It takes a lot longer to join in. Landing legs, same thing. I've got to figure out where this one came from, which angle I want it to be. I want it pointing out. Looks like it came from this spot. So I'm going to put in a little bit of glue, same thing. Put it into the spot I want it to go. And give it some time to set. Now, as I mentioned, I can't see any of my little metal wires down here. I think most of these guys came from the top. I do have the gun turret down here that needs to be also put back together. And the gun turret also needs a little bit of glue. I've got a couple little fidgety bits that I'm going to have to put in with some pliers. All this glue is going to need little paint touch-ups because it's a little shiny on my surface. Now, I don't have any of these little beads anymore, so I'm going to have to find something to replace the missing pieces. 9 little pieces that I'm missing. So I'm just going to use some wire. Same thing, little dab of glue. I'm going to pick up the piece. I'm going to put it in. Toothpicks are the right size. It took several weeks to build this model originally, but I was also looking for right pieces. I would go to places like 99-cent stores and places like that that had stuff that was really cheap, random shapes. It's really about trying to identify what shapes would look good on the model that you're building and seeing if you can make that shape, cut a piece of that shape out, make it happen. So as you can see here, the underbelly is all glued back together, and all I have to do now is just wait for all the parts to dry. Then I'm going to flip it upside down and finish putting the remaining little bits and pieces that are missing on the top back in, and then I'm going to be able to start painting it. So I've now got it flipped up the right way, and I'm now going to start looking at where I'm missing all my little tiny pieces here for all the wires. So this guy needs to be turned 180 degrees. I need a few drops right here. Let's start with this one. Okay, that's good there. The great thing about building your own creation is that you can always put pieces wherever you want them to be. As long as you feel they aesthetically work for the design, then they are going to look good. Let's let this sit here for a moment to dry. So that concludes the repairing of the miniature model itself. Now the trick is to go back and to do all the paint touch-ups. Now the big thing is that I don't have any of my original samples that I had from years ago when I first built this model. So I'm going to have to use and try to mix up my own paints, try to come as close as I possibly can, and then add it back in as additional touch-ups and stuff like that. So yeah. So the next stage is painting. And what I tend to do is I usually go to places, if you're in America, of course, you go to places like Home Depot or Lowe's. They sometimes sell these little tester pieces. You can either get specific colors that you want mixed. Sometimes they have an entire shelf full of mist tints, which means that you can pick them up for like $1 each. I like to pick up a whole pile of random colors for that price because well, it's extremely cheap, and you actually can mix quite well with the house paints that come with that. If not, you're welcome to use any other kind of regular paint, acrylics, that sort of stuff. I never really use oil-based paints when I'm working with models and stuff like that, unless it really requires a oil base or a spray paint kind of based element. In this case, I'm going to try to find a gray that I can figure out and match to this particular color. And then do my little touch-ups along the way. You also want to have yourself a cup of some sort of water that you can wash your brushes in, some sort of rag that can also dry off the excess paint from your brush. Little tiny paint brushes you can get from hobby stores, anywhere from 99-cent stores to different places. There's all hobby stores that can sell them relatively cheap for what you basically want to do here. So at this point, I'm just going to mix in. Now, I do know that most of my colors are gray. Black and white is my key colors for this. But I'm also going to add a little bit of a dark blue because it is on the cool colors. And dark blue happens to be, when you add to gray, ends up making a very cool blue. If I wanted to go with a warmer blue, I would be actually adding a yellow tinge or an orange tinge to it. In this case, I want it to be in the cool colors as the model is. And yeah, so let's do a little bit of mixing here. Actually, mixing is going to help by getting one of these guys. And of course, I want to add some black into my white. Try to figure out the tone. Now, when you are mixing your paints and you're trying to match something from before, the paint color always dries out 2 shades darker than what it is in the actual piece. So be aware of that. You want to be just a fraction lighter, but you also want to test it first on a piece of paper and see when you get close to your actual color. So I'm going to get a little piece of paper and I'm going to test this color out on the edge of a piece of paper. I need a little bit more white in this. Too much white. A little bit of blue. So it seems I found the right color that I want to use. I did use a bit of spray over the top, like a mist. So I've got to look at the color underneath and then what the effects of lightly spraying over the top is going to do. So at this point, I believe I'm happy with the color I've got here. I'm going to paint these little details with one of the brushes I think is appropriate for it. I'm going to use this guy here. I'm going to go in and we're going to paint over all these little corner pieces here. So here I am doing some painting, touching up over areas that I want to continue back to the gray color. So I'm going in, looking at any of the areas that I need to go into, match up, fix up all my little mistakes, all the little fixes, all the little repairs that I need to actually repair on. And I put this onto some supports to help protect the bottom part of this. I did end up by making some little messes and smushy parts on my Mon Calamari turret, and I can go back and do my repairs from that. Now, everything has this layer of mist over it. I remember I actually misted over the top. So when I put the flat colors in, I'm going to need to rematch that color mist over the top so it helps blend it in a lot better. Right now, these colors are just a solid color to help hide all the glue, anything that is showing through as paint marks. Touching up all these little additional pieces I've added back in to help make this all work. I also want to have a look and see wherever I had glue marks that I go over the top of the glue, because it leaves a bit of a sheen to it. And again, you can see that the colors are slightly different than the original, but the original has also got this mist that's over the top that I need to blend in, make it disappear. So I'm going to go back in later on and mist up all these little areas that I've actually put on. I might just do a watered down wash rather than use a spray paint. Spray paints are a little heavy, especially inside the house. And start touching up the top parts. All right, so I'm happy with my first layer touch-ups. I'm going to go back over the top and add a little bit of washing textures once this is all dry. So the pieces are all dry. And now I'm going to add myself a wash over the top of my areas that are extremely high lit. I need to push them back so they kind of match the rest of the model. And the best way to do this is to have a lot of water on your side, come through, you get a little bit of a black, mix it in, because it then forms this shadow piece that is going to allow you to wash over easier over the top and push it back. So you can see that that helps to push back the intense brightness. I'm going to add a little bit more black to that. The intensity knocks them back, and it feels a lot more fluid and organic to what the original design was, and it has a nice blend in there. A few areas in the front here I want to hit too. The idea is not to make that too thick. It should really just be a watered down wash with water and a bit of black paint, which is going to be your shadow. And if you need to, use a hairdryer. And you can see if you need to do a little bit more and where you need to do it, just to help it, again, blend in a little bit better. Keep on repeating until you're happy with the result, and then you find yourself done with all your painting. The other thing I do is I can go back over with a bit of the light color and distress some of the darker areas, hit some highlights on the model, and that helps to highlight stress points, little fractures, little pieces of where the ship might be just slightly more rough or coarse. It doesn't have to be all pristine and perfect. In fact, the Star Wars universe is very much adept to broken down, visually looking starships. And there you have it. I have finished touching up my model. I've glued all the pieces back together. I'm going to test out the wires another day. I don't have the equipment on me to do that right now. But please, if you like this video, please like and then subscribe if you have not already. And I'll bring you more models in the future. Next time I'm going to start building out some of my 12-inch collection models and extending on my room with some of that stuff. And on that, I'm going to be building from scratch. So yes, please follow me along and let's take this journey together.